I have a couple of questions. One is, I'm wondering about alternative economies and living integrally.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of that particularly in relation to the cost of this conference and
how
we might be able to bring this kind of knowledge to more people, make it more accessible.
Okay.
My other question is, I understood why The Amateur was a good movie, but I'm wondering why you thought Exotica was stunning.
Oh, excellent. Well, so don't you like Adam Egoyan?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd go to stunning, though.
Oh.
It was interesting.
Probably a loose slip on my part late one night writing, don't you think? It was striking to me in terms of just the way it played with certain, not just images, but certain expectations about what should happen in that kind of situation. And I could go into that more, but I think maybe we can switch to the other part about economies. But excellent question. Oh, good one. So you how do you know that much about that trivial a thing?
Just from one case.
Oh, cool. Then how do you know it's not stunning?
How do I know?
It's not stunning if you didn't see it.
No, I did.
Oh,
I did.
Oh. And then you're sitting there going, not stunning, not stunning, not stunning.
But
must save up my money so I can go to seminar and tell the bastard that it's not stunning and the economics of this sucks. You got kind of a double punch. That's a stunning movie that can do both of those things. That's right.
And I needed to come here just to ask that question.
Yeah, cool. Alternative economies. Yeah, well, here's the interesting thing. Well, economy, the dismal science, is what economists do is they look basically at the lower right quadrant because they really don't have an understanding of interiors. And then they track how goods and services move around. And then they try to figure out why they're moving around and what happens and what can be done in terms of the exchange of goods and services. But they try to do so without really understanding motivations in the left-hand quadrants. And so what they usually do, because they have to come, nothing in the right-hand quadrant moves of its own. The intentionalities are the left-hand version, so nothing in the right-hand moves on its own. And so why are these things moving around? I mean, you have cars and automobiles and guns and butter out there, but just by themselves, they don't exchange. I noticed, I watched them, and they just sit there. And so some human agency picks it up and moves it around. Now, it does so for a reason, and that's what's interesting. So why is somebody engaged in exchanging guns and butter and copies of Exotica? What's driving them? And the answer is different levels of motivation, isn't it? I mean, that makes sense. But isn't it odd that you try to develop a science of why things move around by leaving out the why? Hence the dismal science. So here's what they tend to do. Most of them, because they have to get the stuff going, something has to push it around, they assume that the agents doing it are operating from rational self-interest. Isn't that true? Human beings are not rational. They don't know what their self-interest is, and if they did, they wouldn't act on it. So why economists get mileage out of that is one of the eternal mysteries. And they don't really do very well at all. But what is interesting, just the way economics is done now, is it is a reflection of how goods and services move based on a prevailing dominant mode of interest or that kind of thing that's going on in marketplaces. And so what we want to try to do with an integral economics is obviously look at all four quadrants and try to determine what movements in the lower right are corresponding with some of the factors that are occurring in the left hand. And Abe Maslow was one of the first ones to really broach this topic and get into it a bit. When he talked about his needs hierarchy, one of the first people to pick it up were business folks, because they realized two things. One, that the needs hierarchy was in fact driving the exchange of goods and services. And two, it was a way to market more effectively. Because if you know why somebody's buying this or moving this or picking up the butter or picking up the gun and so on, then you're going to be able to sell to them better. now. That's a little bit more, could get a little more profit motive, but that's okay. But that was sort of one of the first ones to start doing that. We hope to have, and we have several. We've had several meetings on integral. They tend to call it integral money, but we want to really expand that, and that's also it becomes almost inseparable from politics and several other human sciences in that sense. So we want to be able to look at all of that. I think it's extremely important. I think it's absolutely fascinating. And you might know that there are people, just to show you what's happening, there's basically, if you want to just do the view from 50,000 feet and go back and look at economics as it unfolded over the last 50,000 years, and not just use file dynamics. There is a purple economics and the types of stuff that was exchanged there. There's red economics, the type of stuff that was exchanged there. There's blue economics and so on, orange economics. And we've got right to the point now where we're between blue and orange. Wall Street is between blue and orange economic drivers. And what we're starting to see is the slow introduction of green economic drivers, particularly in this country. And in the last 30 years, there have been two major changes in business and education. Well, one major change, which is that both of them had sort of essentially an orange orientation. There was the introduction of green into the marketplace and into the classroom. And so on the educational front, what we've seen, of course, is educational standards tanked. And so everybody gets an A now. And if you're following Doonesbury, there's this whole, everybody in math class got an A except one person who got a B+. Now, math, right? So it's not like there's a whole lot of interpretive leeway. And so everybody was saying 2 + 2 is 4. They got the A's. This person was 2 + 2 is 7. Now, the way Green would handle that is, excellent try. I'd like to applaud your sincerity in bringing that forth. And then they get an A2. But this person happened to give them a B+, and the college is being sued. Because as the student explained it, I deserve straight A's like everybody else on campus. And the campus itself starts to agree because they say, after all, we are in the business of, it's a business. So students have to be happy with what we do. Students are not happy if we teach them. They're happy if we give them A's and send them off into the world. So there's a pressure to do that. We can talk about that. And in the marketplace, green, now there are positive things about it. There seriously are positive things about healthy green. In the business world, the biggest change in the last 20 or 30 years is the introduction of green practices into the workplace, particularly sensitivity training, sexual harassment, better employment opportunities. All of those, by and large, very positive, very healthy green. The downsides of it, of course, but so there's all of a sudden, economics is flatland, that there's just a series of things out there, and they're moved around for rational reasons, categorically false. And so what we're doing is actually trying to track the different types of economic drivers and the types of economic money that tends to represent these different drivers. And some of you know there's a whole move by Bernard Lightier to introduce something called the Terra. And Bernard Lightier is a member of Integral Institute and was the gentleman responsible really for what's called the Belgian Compromise that allowed the euro to be introduced in Europe. So he's a pretty powerful economic, very nice guy. And he's really, in a sense, attempting to introduce a green currency in addition to orange. So those are just little, we could talk about this again for a very long time, but those are just very interesting aspects about what can happen when we start talking about economic stuff. Why is this seminar so damned expensive? Which leads right to the question about this damn expensive. We have first of all, we try to be very liberal with scholarships and for people that can't afford it. We have all sorts of outreach programs that we are planning and are doing right now, including weekend introductions to this for $99. And the reason that we wanted to start here, with sort of really major ones, is really to establish a presence and to try to create a community of people where we would basically give you all of the tools that we had and we're working with and sort of bring you up to speed on what we're doing so you can become a part of the community of what we're doing. As far as I'm concerned, this is community creating. And so we just wanted to be able to do that first instead of start with these other things. But we do have a whole lot of other things planned. Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention, too, you talked about the economy needing to go hand in hand with politics and those other aspects.
Yeah.
And I guess I look at it as needing to go hand in hand with values and moral decisions. So.
Absolutely. All of those. Absolutely.
Thanks.
Yeah. The only reason I just mentioned politics is that there's a whole, the general liberal tradition puts a great, from Marx to progressive liberals now, put a great deal of emphasis on economic equality as the most important social driver. So money in politics in that sense has had a very strong historical connection.